people don't realize not just the amount of effort, but the kind of effort we have to put in, which at times is incredibly boring,
right,
and tolling, and for example, touring, which from outside seems super fun.
right.
It is. We get to meet a lot of cool places and play for very cool people in very cool places, but it's also very tolling, and you're away from home, and it's also kind of not that cool.
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap. Of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest stories from this last week. Salute, as always, to our girl, B. Marie, who does our daily IG live show, Arise and Vibe, giving you the daily headlines each and every weekday. Now, of course, as I always do, an incredible guest hopping on in just a little bit. This week, it is the artist collective and band known as Rawayana. They'll be hopping on, help me break down some of the biggest stories. Before they do, though, man, let's hop into some of the BS from this last week. So now on the latest episode of what is the Twilight Zone, that is our life, we saw the start of the human cheese doodle that is Donald Trump, the start of his second impeachment trial. Now, while I have little faith in this whole trial actually really doing anything, in my mind, it is still important to hold people accountable for their actions. And at the very least, we're probably going to get some laughable moments out of it. And boy, after seeing a few days of this trial, I was right. Now, aside from the fact that our government as a whole is like this ongoing joke that nobody ever asked for, there's also humor to be found in Donald Trump's inability to hire lawyers that just aren't completely inept, which I know is probably like a huge shocker for many of you, especially seeing, the fine specimen that he chose to represent him in his whole voter fraud circus. Now, both sides pleaded their case as to why this whole thing should go to trial, and people are saying Donald Trump was furious at the presentation made by his legal team. And I gotta say, for the first time ever, I have to agree with the man. Now, let's take a look at some of the footage that we have from his lawyer's presentation.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take
we're trying to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
Okay, so that wasn't actually footage of his lawyers. That was just another completely botched case in Texas. But to be honest, I would have gladly taken that over what we actually heard from Donald Trump's legal team.
I'll be quite frank with you. We changed what we were going to do on account that we thought that the House manager's presentation was well done.
Now, I'm no lawyer here, but if your argument was actually the truth, why would it matter what the other side had to say? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but facts don't change, right? Like, the very definition of a fact, and I quote, is a thing that is known or proved to be true, end quote. So if Donald Trump was in fact innocent, why would he have to completely change the story? I mean, his incredible lawyers, aside from botching that right there at the very beginning, essentially, they also put their foot in their mouth when it came to the election itself. Like, we remember the whole basis of this insurrection that happened was based upon the fact, or I should say the notion that Donald Trump threw out there, that the election was stolen from him. But in his lawyer's argument, they admit that the American people as a whole actually decided not to reelect Donald Trump.
The American people just spoke, and they just changed administrations. So in the light most favorable to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle here, their system works. The people are smart enough, in the light most favorable to them, they're smart enough to pick a new administration if they don't like the old one. And they just did.
Now, if you're watching all that thinking like, man, what side are these guys on? Yeah, join the club. We're all kind of confused, especially because it's Donald Trump cutting their checks. But also, let's be fair. What would be your argument? It's very obvious what happened. Under the guise and encouragement of Donald Trump, these crazies went and stormed the Capitol. Case closed, right? Now, even with a team of incompetent lawyers in his corner, personally, I'm not going to hold my breath when it comes to Trump actually being convicted, especially when only 6 Republicans voted yes to continue on with the trial. I mean, that kind of fact makes it really hard to have any faith in our government, especially when high-ranking Republicans like Mitch McConnell have proved that, aside from having no neck, he also has no backbone, as he was one of the 44 members of the Senate to vote against continuing the trial of Donald Trump. And just a reminder, 2/3 of the Senate have to vote in agreement of the conviction of Trump and then bar him from office in a separate agreement. So all of this, it seems unlikely, but I'm more than willing to be wrong on this. It just doesn't seem like anything is going to change. And somehow, man, the Republican Party, even with Trump not in office, are still loyal to him till their dying day, which hopefully this party begins to see their dying day sooner rather than later, because this is just absolute nonsense. Let's lighten things up a little bit, and I'm going to bring on my guest in order to do so. And I'm excited about these guys. So my guests this week, help me break it all down, are a Latin Grammy nominated artist collective whose latest single, Camarones y Viniles, off their forthcoming album, is available everywhere right now. Rawayana, how we feeling?
Thanks very much for having us, man. I'm doing great. Thanks. How about you?
Thanks, Daniel.
Everything's good, man. I can't complain. So I'm really excited to learn more about your guys' collective, about the band and your music and everything like that. Before we dive into it, though, I want to kind of, if it's cool, get your perspective on a couple of big headlines from this last week.
Great.
Let's do it.
Beautiful. So, I mean, one of the biggest stories this last week, it's personal for me because my football team won the Super Bowl this last week. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won. Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl ring, which is crazy to think about. And you have a lot of people calling him the greatest athlete of all time. And regardless of what you feel about him, I think everybody can appreciate his discipline and his sort of obsession with greatness and the sport of playing football for as long as he can. You know, like his diet and his life revolves around how can he play football for as long as possible. And I think for somebody like you guys who create art and do this for, you know, a living, you have to have this sort of crazy level of dedication to your craft, to creating, to writing music, to doing the visuals and all this stuff, right? So many things that people don't see. They just see the awards, they see the Grammy nomination, but they don't realize how much work you guys actually put into it behind the scenes. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that. I mean, the sacrifices you guys had to make coming up and the level of just discipline it took to really just focus in on the stuff that actually matters when it comes to your career.
Wow, yeah, definitely. I mean, I like always the analogy with athletes, you know, from our perspective, because there's so much in common. Like just what you said, like basically how much you have to put in your craft and the sacrifices and everything, and how long it takes and how improbable it is for you to make it in both of our industries.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely an inspiration. Like I don't get haters on Brady. It's like, what are you talking about? Like this man is a freak of nature, you know?
Right.
So yeah, definitely that's the way we aim at everything and at life. I think we're very passionate about what we do, and we understood very early on that the only way to even consider making it was to go all in, no?
Right.
So that's basically our whole mentality with our projects and the way we go through our careers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead. I want to hear your perspective as well, man.
When we were starting in this business, you know, someone told me that if you're gonna take this way, you have to know that it's going to take like 3 times much effort that if you take a regular, socially
acceptable path.
Acceptable,
path,
yes.
Right?
So I think we have that in mind since our first album, you know, like, and it's something that we were. I was a soccer player, and I remember like thinking about being a professional soccer player, and I think that's the most important thing in this business. You know, like you have to be passionate about what you're doing because not everybody can work in something that they love. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
And also, it's kind of all related. It all makes full circle because I don't think you can put in the amount of hours and sacrifice if you're not very passionate about it. So it's all kind of linked that way, at least for me. Like people don't realize not just the amount of effort, but the kind of effort we have to put in, which at times is incredibly boring.
Right.
And tolling and for example touring, which from outside seems super fun.
Right.
It is. We get to meet a lot of cool places and play for very cool people in very cool places, but it's also very tolling and you're away from home and it's also kind of not that cool in many ways, and people don't realize that. And even studying the instrument, you know, like there's a huge part of trying to master what you do, which is so much boring and difficult to stay focused on.
Yeah.
So you need that passion, definitely. You need that feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys hit on some really incredible things because first of all, what you just said about learning your instrument, right? That's like if you were to sit there and watch somebody doing that, it's boring as hell to watch, right? Like the hours, the days, the weeks and years it takes of just sitting around by yourself practicing and getting good. And people don't see that. They just hear the finished product. They don't see how much time that actually took. And then also what you said before was when you're deciding to take a certain path, it's going to be a long and harder one. I'm assuming you're talking about your style of music, right? Because you guys are making some really incredible music, but it's catchy, but it's not like your corny pop music that's super simple, right? And meant to be commercially successful and all that kind of stuff. You're creating actual art from the music you're putting out there to the visuals. And a lot of times it's going to take a longer period of time to find an audience for that, right? So you really have to like believe in your vision, even when it seems like nobody cares about what you're doing and they just want to hear the latest, I don't know, Taylor Swift record or something like that, you know? So I think you hit on something there that's incredibly important to point out.
Yeah, definitely. I think at least how I see what Beto said on that, it's it's like a double level of choosing hard path.
Yeah.
Like just choosing music, it's crazy. Even if you're trying to go the pop way, the mainstream way, it's probably even crazier because everybody wants to be famous. No, most people just want to be famous and don't want to do the artistry thing. Right. So first you have to decide you want to do that, and then once you see the options available in that in the whole spectrum, you realize, okay, that isn't for me. I want to do my thing. And you're basically choosing like putting extra hurdles on your way, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's crazy to think about the way, but it's respectable because when it happens, I assume it feels a lot sweeter. You know, when you know that you did it your way, you didn't sell out, you didn't try and change your vision for other people. I mean, that's kind of what is impressive about him. And what was funny when we're seeing now a video came out of Tom Brady celebrating now, right? He put in all the work and he was like drunk at like this parade and was throwing the trophy to fans and things like that.
Tom, how awesome was that?
Tom Brady, Super Bowl MVP 7 times. This trophy, we'll see here. Oh man. Oh, wow.
Like really living it up, and really you could tell like the relief that he had, I guess, of this whole season being over. I'm curious for you guys, man, like you put in all this work, all this time, all this effort. When you do reach one of those goals or something like a Grammy nomination comes out, like what is your go-to celebration? Like, are you guys the like hard partying type? You're going to go out there and just get drunk and celebrate? What is your kind of MO when it comes to celebrating one of these big victories for your career?
I think we also like, because of the context in which the project was born.
Yeah.
We had a few very fun years when we were just playing like super small clubs and pubs
Right.
and stuff like that, especially inside our country before we were able to tour outside of Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, when we started going out, it was still like super sketchy tours, super punk rock mentality on the tours. So I think we did a lot of partying back then, and like we got over the party and the stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Also because, well, there's a few things, like everyone got older and bored about being hungover and all of that, but also like the tour got longer. So you realize that it's really a bummer to feel real bad the morning after, and you need to sound check, or you need to get on a plane and go through an airport and all the stuff. Like, it's the worst that can happen to you.
It's an actual job now.
Yeah, definitely. And you find different ways to enjoy it. And for me personally, it became a lot more enjoyable when we stopped like the hardcore partying. Like, we go out still, and we like to have a few drinks and meet, especially if we're in a new town.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like everything just got way more fun when we got over like that early, younger partying stage. Like, we used to, like, the whole show was a party. I remember one of the most fun things about playing in the band, at least when I started, was how wasted we were when we got up on stage.
Yeah.
And we pretty quickly realized that it was way more fun to be like completely sober, like super present, and the experience is different, and it becomes about something else. It becomes about connection with the audience. It becomes about connection within the band. It's like I always saw it very similar to sports, you know, like on stage we get to play usually only once each song, and probably not all the songs, just a few. So you have that one chance to get them right, and to get that lick right and this thing right. So it's kind of what sportsmen do, you know, like you don't get a replay, you know, you need to get it right now. So it becomes about that focus and that obsession with, which for me became like a high also, you know, like trying to get it right this one time is like the ultimate goal. And when you nail it, it's just the best feeling in the world. So
I love that, because what you're talking about is being super present. And I think when you are a highly motivated, driven person, you guys are trying to get crazy goals and achieve all these things. It's easy that once you achieve them, you're kind of almost on to the next thing, right? Like, you don't really give yourself this opportunity to really just like savor in the moment. And I love that you guys are actually, you know, trying your best, that even when you're on stage, song by song, you know, lick by lick, drum fill by drum fill, trying to like really enjoy and focus in that moment, because that's the most difficult thing to do, because, you know, there's always something else you could be doing, right? There's always like another milestone. Once you get nominated, you want to win a Grammy. Now, when you win one, you want to win 5 more. You know what I mean? There's always something else you could put on. And if you're not super focused on being present in the moment, all these great memories can kind of pass you by, you know?
Definitely. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, and so that kind of leads nicely into your song, Camarones y Viniles, because a lot of the song and the video for it is about nostalgia, right? This concept of nostalgia, and kind of, I think I read somewhere that it's also loosely about, like, some of you guys have this obsession with like kind of this old school hipster culture. I kind of picture like Williamsburg, Brooklyn kind of thing, like maybe, you know, I don't know, 10 years ago, right? When all of that was like really started to pop off, and the whole indie scene and that kind of thing. I mean, let's kind of dive into that a little bit. I mean, why the nostalgia for a certain era?
Well, we were starting that. We started that project while we were producing a video clip called Sádico in Los Angeles. And when the melody was born, the only 2 words that matched with that melody were Camarones y Viniles, you know? So that's a very strange mix.
Yeah.
So after a few months, I sent that idea to Fofo with a Britney Spears song, and those 2 words and Britney Spears were the starting point of.
Wait, why Britney Spears though?
I don't know why.
You can't just gloss over that.
Yeah, I remember perfectly. Like, he used to tell me always like, man, I keep hearing this song in my head when I sing this melody, and it was a super
Lucky.
funny,
Lucky.
a
Do you
super
remember
Lucky,
hit
that's the
also,
Britney's
like,
version.
Lucky. She's so lucky. She's a star.
and
I don't know why.
it was I mean, I remember it just being like so hilarious, and like we have a laugh always in our project. Like we started as a humor project, we evolved into like a more serious thing, but this is the way we go about everything. We try not to be so serious about ourselves, especially, and sometimes from a goofy joke something cool can come out, you know. In this case, it's definitely like all of our albums have one song that is actually just a joke, and it's usually like at the end of the record and probably hidden as well.
Yeah.
And this time around, we loved it so much that we picked it to be a single, and we love it. It's one of our favorite tunes in the record, but it came about as a joke, you know, an internal joke. Like we found very interesting and also funny the whole discussion about hipsterism, especially in Latin America, which it always hits a little different. Everything hits a little different here. It's interpreted a little differently, and always comes with a delay. Like when 10 years ago that whole Williamsburg thing exploded, like no one was talking about that in Latin America. And then a few years went by, and you started seeing like some hoods in Buenos Aires, some hoods in Mexico, some hoods in certain cities, and that culture is starting to nourish. But the funny thing for us is that it's so ambiguous and relative, you know, like what is and what is not hipster, and who is and who isn't hipster, and also like hipsters never admit that they are hipsters. So it's super like, how can you tell? So yeah, basically the song evolved into us making fun of well, especially one character in our organization, which we always give him trouble for being the hipster, but also it's also things we love that we talk about in the song and on the video. You know, it's like kind of a joke on ourselves in so many ways, but yeah, like the whole phenomenon of the hipsters, at least as we know them in the 21st century, because there has always been hipsters in the world, but not this kind of stereotypical cliche hipster we have now. So yeah, that's basically like the whole concept around the story, and we're very amused and proud that it became a cool tune.
I love that. I mean, last thing I want to ask you guys, does it bother you, because it's a goal of mine to be able to interview a wide spectrum of artists from Latin America, right? Not just the traditional reggaeton or trap artists, but also show people how diverse our culture is and how many different things there are going on. Does it bother you that it kind of feels like the artists that get the most attention when it comes to Latin artists is primarily like the reggaeton or the trap artists right now? Like everybody thinks of Bad Bunny is like the only representation of, let's say, Latin America, at least when it comes to the States over here. Is that like something you keep in mind, that you want to kind of try to break the mold, or is it something you're not really concerned with?
I don't have problem with that, you know. Like a few years ago, I was in Miami and two Germans were talking about the beat, the Latin beat, you know, and the reggaeton is doing amazing things in the world. Like when we were traveling when we were in Berlin for we were on a Europe tour, and we went to Berlin, like watching people of all around the world dancing reggaeton is a very interesting thing about our music, and how that genre is the evolution of the genre since we were, I don't know, 10 years old, something like that.
Yeah, when it started, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's very interesting, like watching how something evolves as you can enjoy it now, you know. So, and we love dancing reggaeton too. So
Yeah, it started like super. I don't know if underground, but yeah, definitely it was underground at first, and very exclusive to the Caribbean. Actually, like I remember, I moved to Mexico like 5 years ago, and I remember the first year I was here, it was super weird to listen to reggaeton on the street, or get on an Uber and play, and the radio was playing reggaeton. That never happened just 5 years ago. Imagine. So it was like a super Caribbean phenomenon. So it's crazy that we now get to see it like on Jimmy Fallon, and the late night. So I think it's cool. It's something positive that gets attention on Latin American music. And it's just like the gate pushers that will make room for the rest of us to get attention. I think maybe in Latin countries it was a bit especially from the industry, like the decision makers and the taste makers. It's been kind of monotone. I don't know how to say it, like a one-sided speech, and everyone trying to get a hold of the golden cow that's gonna feed us all, which is kind of boring in some ways, but overall I think it's very positive as a phenomenon. And also I think it's like with everything in life and in the world, it's just a matter of cycles, and we're in the part of the cycle where reggaeton has all the attention, and that will provoke that some new and different things come around eventually, because people are going to grow thirst for that. And I think it's actually kind of started to happen. Even reggaeton and on what we call urban artists are starting to branch out and experiment outside of the classic rhythm. So I think overall it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up a good point when you said it's the gate pusher, because it's going to start exposing people who aren't Spanish speaking to now getting used to listening to music that they might not understand the lyrics, but at least they understand the feeling, So what that does is that you're going to get the rock fans who now can look past the fact that the majority of your music is in Spanish, but they can understand the feeling of it, And I think that that's a great way to kind of look at it. And it's one thing I love about at least a lot of the Latin American artists that I've talked to, is that there is kind of this unity and everybody is celebrating each other's victories, in this world right now. So as we wrap up, I know you guys are working on a new album. You have a new album coming out. Do we have a release date for that, or do we know kind of roughly when you're thinking you want to put that out?
Well, we're aiming at sometime in the middle of the year. We actually recorded the album before the lockdown, and we've been holding to it to just waiting for the right moment, because it's like a longer and much deeper and kind of intense album from what we were doing before. So we took all this time to figure out the best way to present it to the world and give it justice, especially because we feel we feel what we did is one of those works that need to be enjoyed as a whole. And nowadays that's very unusual. So we're kind of just trying to figure out the best way to do so, and we're very happy with towards what we're aiming, and very excited to share it with the world. But right now we're on the stage still not revealing much, not talking about dates and not talking about titles and stuff, but definitely starting to share music, and we're gonna be sharing music throughout the whole year, basically every month.
Wow, beautiful. I love that. Well, guys, listen, I appreciate you hopping on here. I'm excited that when this whole lockdown nonsense and COVID is over, I can hopefully come and check out a show from you guys, man. I'd really love to do that.
For sure, man.
Definitely. We would love that. Yeah.
Thanks for the space.
Of course. Well, listen, stay safe, guys. And again, thanks for hopping on.
Cool. See ya.
Bye, bro.
Man, big thank you to my guest this week, Rawayana. Make sure you go stream their music, but also go check out their music videos. Their visuals are just absolutely incredible. Now, before I get out of here, I do want to end on some positivity. And now we'll do that, of course, in the form of a positive quote. Now, of course, it is Black History Month, so I want to make sure all month long my positive quotes are coming from someone in the African American or Afro-Latino community. Now, this week, I want to celebrate Roberto Clemente with one of his quotes. And his quote is, "I want to be remembered as a baseball player who gave all he had." I'll say that again. "I want to be remembered as a baseball player who gave all that he had." And I love this quote, especially in the conversation that we were talking about with Rawayana, talking about Tom Brady and just all that it takes to be great, right? All the determination, all of the dedication, all of the discipline that it takes to achieve greatness. Now, I say all of this to encourage people to truly dive into your passions. Now, if there's something out there that you want to be great at, you want to help people, you want to create, you want to work in a certain field, whatever the case may be, go in head first, blinders on, and focus in on that thing. Whatever it is that makes you truly feel alive, chase after it and give it your all. Don't sit there and allow yourself to be okay with mediocrity. Be okay with being average. Put in the time, the hours, and the effort, and the discipline that it takes to truly be great. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing somebody achieve greatness in the thing that they love. And that greatness, that achievement of greatness comes from all of the reps, the hours, and the time that they put in to achieve that. And if you want to be remembered as great, you got to put in that time and that effort. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into this week's show. Salute once again to our girl, B. Marie, who does our daily IG live show, Arise and Vibe, giving you the daily headlines. Make sure you go and check her out each and every week. Support her on the LATV Instagram page. And of course, join me here every week as I break down some of the biggest stories. I'll talk to you guys soon. Stay safe. Until next time, bye.